Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Accidental CEO podcast. My guest today is Joey Lowery. He is the owner of Media Shark. He worked with clients as big as Sprint and Boost Mobile and is in some of the local companies in Florida. He bootstrapped his agency from scratch after being fired for questioning ethics from a now competitor in the industry. The first year, he did over 7 figures in sales, and now he do a lot of consulting, public speaking, and coaching. He's also an Amazon bestseller, and we had a great conversation about all the things that people need to be focusing on when it comes to their marketing efforts into the creative industry. And he gave you a lot of amazing tips from things that you should have on your website all the way to how to find the best marketing agency for your specific services. I hope you enjoy it. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Accidental CEO podcast, where we bridge the gap between the creativity you love and the CEO mindset you need. I'm your host, Nata Salvatori, wedding photographer and business educator. Find full show notes and resources at accidentalceopod.com. Let's get into today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Accidental CEO podcast. We have an amazing guest with us today, Joey Lowery. I'm so excited to talk to him. He has an amazing story and lots of great tips for you guys. So, Joey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
So excited. So we just found out we're neighbors here in Florida, which is awesome. We're having a pretty nice day, nice and sunny.
Oh, it's beautiful out right now.
I know, right? So tell us a little bit about yourself, just what you do now, what kind of services you offer, who is your client, and then we're going to go into a little bit of your story.
Yeah, no. So basically, right now we do a lot of digital marketing. I do a lot of coaching too as well on the side. But really what it boils down to is if we have clients that want to run highly targeted ads, to very select individuals, maybe a very unique type of customer base, we run video ads, display, programmatic, all that stuff. We also do SEO, website design. But yeah, really a lot of it's just, clients coming to us saying, hey, we have a very unique audience we want to go after. We do a lot of B2B, a lot of B2C as well. We've worked from companies to your local lawn care company to we had Sprint and Boost as a client before the T-Mobile acquisition. So it's definitely been a range for sure.
That's awesome. And you started on that area, but not with your own company. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you transitioned to own your own company now.
Yeah, so it was kind of one of those things like I think, you burn the bridge or even burn the boat situation. So what was happening was I was working for a company out in Arizona. I won't mention who they are, obviously. And,
right.
But basically was working for them. I was probably 2 or 3 years into it and making $20,000, $30,000 a month in sales commission. Doing basically what I do now, but just as a salesperson, not on the back end, the media buying, all that stuff. And so basically I started losing clients. So did some of my other sales associates, and it had been going on for quite some time. And basically what I did was I was like, I'm going to, in my mind, I was going to put on this red cape and go, present what's going on, all the issues, to the higher ups. And the company's not very big at all. So, I had a direct line to the CEO. Same with my, my boss was literally under the CEO. And, I was just losing some clients, and I, even the other guys were too, and the women that were working there, except they were more established in life with, kids, and, they looked at this more as a career. My naive side didn't really think that I would cause any problems by bringing this up. And so one day, one night after having some liquid courage at a digital marketing conference, I was sitting around the table with the boss and, some other people. And I brought it up. I was like, hey, I think we're doing something wrong here. Our analytics doesn't line up to our dashboard that we report on. I think we have transparency issues. I think here's our issue. And literally the next day I was fired on the spot. And
Wow.
So, yeah. And really, I remember going to the bar, because obviously it's like one of those things where it's like, I don't know, she was like 11 o'clock when I got let go. And I'm just like, I have to fly home. I just lost my job. They didn't really give me an answer. And so I'm just sitting there just trying to think like, what's next? And so I decided, screw this. I'm going to create a company that's going to be their competitor. And it literally started off kind of as a joke. I mean, not really a joke, but just like, I didn't know how it was going to work. And then within 1 year, we landed Sprint.
Wow. That's amazing.
So
it kind of it gave you a little push to get things rolling, but in a good way. Ended up being a great transition, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I actually was talking about this the other day. I wouldn't take anything back. I mean, at the time, going through it all, the trial, the adversity, the pain, literally the hate I had for them. Eventually that all blossomed into what I have now. And if it wasn't for that stuff, I wouldn't have Media Shark.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we talked a little bit about offline use. You had a pretty successful year even during the pandemic. So let's talk about that a little bit because that's something that happened to me too. And I know that's not the norm out there. Like a lot of people obviously struggle during the pandemic. A lot of people in the creative world had to go get extra jobs and get some additional income somehow. So tell us a little bit about what happened that year and how did it become a successful year for you?
Yeah, honestly, it wasn't easy. And I think that's one of the key moments that I always want to bring up. It's that there's a lot of people that were struggling, but we also noticed that the brands that were doubling down on media and marketing material, they were doing really well, because again, the let's call it the ecosystem of business, everybody pulled back. So the people that were doubling down in business, tended to do a lot better because the competition was lower. So we kind of took that analogy or, we'll call it that breakdown and applied it to ourselves. So what we did was we just reached out, a ton more. It's always a numbers game. But what we found out was, all these companies had been working with very big agencies and they, weren't very specialized. So when we came into play and it had a very special offer working with a very set, unique type of client, and we tailored all our messaging to be very direct, exactly to that, type of audience, it did really well. And that was the main thing was, instead of being all broad and saying, hey, we're a digital marketing company, we honed in our skill. We knew what the pains were for, each type of industry we went after and just doubled down on it. And that was probably some of our biggest success moments was niching down and doubling down.
What are some of the things that you did that you felt like were a little bit different that set you apart at that time?
Well, yeah. So I think one thing was we turned our message into stop getting screwed. We still keep it to that day. Because I think a lot of people walked into the pandemic thinking, as a business, how do I keep my doors open? Let alone have I been wasting money with marketing, and how do we keep this going? So we realized that there's a huge market out there. People just feel like they've been screwed by digital marketing agencies. So we went to the aspect of transparency. Really marketed that. Also went down to the line of we know you've been screwed. So working with us, it's a completely different situation. The other thing too that we made sure we did was, we doubled down on our numbers. So when it came down to actually doing more outreach, same thing with calls and flyers. We mailed out actually like thank you letters to potential customers, and we're like, hey, thanks for being a customer next year. And that
Oh,
was actually
nice.
something kind of funny. It worked.
That's awesome. That's a very cool idea.
Yeah.
Like reaching out, doing something outside. I think a lot of the people that did well during the pandemic were people that were thinking outside of the box and thinking of different things to do and kind of pivoting things a little bit more. So that was a great marketing tips
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. It was one of those things that I think, but again, it wasn't one thing that I thought was like, hey, this one was more or less a home run. We still ran ads. We still, did stuff on YouTube. I still was doing stuff, speaking on stage, or where I could. But at the same time, what it kind of boiled down to is like, we have to get creative, do some other stuff, and we can't honestly know which one's going to work 100%. But at the same time, maintain what we currently been doing, and maybe kind of create unique offers that really apply to that individual or that customer that we're trying to go after.
Yeah, I think individualizing services and making your client feel special and just really focusing on that experience makes a huge difference in any service industry, really.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it definitely, we talked about how the market is so saturated. You hear that all the time, especially with photographers. We love saying that,
Yeah.
which I feel like is overused and not so much as true as we think it is. But, how do you stand out? And I feel like where we can be more individualized is in how we treat our clients and the kind of experience we give them. Because yes, taking pictures, there's a lot of people that take really nice pictures out there. So how can you make yourself different? And
Yeah.
it comes down to how you treat your clients.
I think that too. And I think it's also about getting out of your head. If you always see limitations, you'll always be fenced in. And I think you have to take a step back and be like, okay, you know what? There might be a fence there, but there also could be a gate that allowed me to go to the next area. And, if you don't get out of your head, you're always going to be limited by, an issue or something that's going to cause you not to move forward or progress.
Yeah, I know you like talking about that. I know that's one of your favorite topics. So, what are some of the things that you usually teach, or some of the tips that you give people that you feel like are getting stuck on, focusing on the negative things and not finding the solutions?
Yeah, I think going back to where I started from was getting fired to guessing at this business. I didn't have a college background, didn't have really any really marketing background. I was good at sales, and I'm sure it's just like people in your world who pick up a camera and they realize they're really good at this and they enjoy it and there's a passion behind it. But then it's like, oh my gosh, how do I land a client? How do I actually scale this thing? Let alone I'm making money, but how do I keep it going?
Yeah.
So I think one of the big things was actually finding focus groups, getting in groups that are where the type of people that you want to be, or maybe it's the type of, business owners that you want to be like, and then finding those groups and then attending conferences. I mean, it was just so interesting to me once the pandemic was over, how many people were all in the same boat wanting community again. And so finding a community of people like you, especially ones where you're the smallest in the room, it just does wonders for your psyche, and let alone your ability just to keep pushing forward. Because there's always somebody out there that's done what you're going, or has done what you're doing and has made it through it.
Exactly. I think that's very important. We talk about community a lot when it comes to the creative world, and I feel like there's a lot of gatekeeping, just like I feel like any other place, but there's a lot of good places where you can find, like you said, rooms full of people that you're not learning only from the people on the stage, but you're also learning from the people that are sitting next to you, which is always amazing. So you know you're in the right place when that's happening.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
What do you think are some of the major mistakes that people make when they're hiring a marketing agency?
Transparency. I mean, that's number one. If you think of it, whatever your budget is, and I know this is hard sometimes because we've worked with budgets from a couple $1,000s a month in marketing to, six figures, all the way up to, I mean, when we work with Sprint, they spent $700,000 in a matter of a
Right.
week. So we know what it's like when it's like small budget, mom and pa will call it, to the big boys. But the truth is, it's your transparency. If you can't get a hold of the owner, and I'm not saying that that's always the case, because again, it just depends on what you bring to the table as a business. Just as any business knows, there's always, always the small customer who tends to cause the most noise, and kind
Yeah.
of be kind of stressful. But I think on the reverse side, really just boiling down to what is it that they're doing with your budget. So if you come to the table and you say, hey, I'm spending X for X, then what am I getting? What's my deliverables? In this day and world, I mean, from Google to Facebook to running ads, doing billboards, whatever you're doing, they can quantify it. So understanding what you're doing with your money and what deliverables you're getting out of it, but don't be afraid to test. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I have is like, marketing is not car insurance, life insurance. You don't have to necessarily use the same people, Farmers Insurance or Geico or State Farm or whoever you're using. Treat your marketing agencies like that too. Find specific niche, type marketing agencies. Like for us, we don't necessarily work with photographers directly, but we run highly targeted ads. So a lot of times it's like, all right, so if I'm going to work with a marketing company that works with photographers, let's take a step back and go, okay, well, what do they do currently? Are they placing ads in like the perfect wedding guide? Are they actually running ads online? And if they are, do they have true success stories? Are they designing websites and landing pages that actually convert? Is it possible for me to actually really see the testimonials? And on top of that, can I even go check out who they've worked with and see the the benefit of how they prospered working under this agency? And that's a big one. And also watch out for hidden bullshit, excuse my language, fees. They fee you up around every corner. And that's a sign of an agency that's either struggling or an agency that just doesn't care.
Yeah, I've had my little share of experience in working with marketing companies, so definitely understand that. I think asking those questions of like, what am I going to get with this investment? Like having a clear understanding of what the deliverables are, like you said. Just like you have as a photographer, for example, when somebody's booking a certain package with you, you have it listed there, everything that you're going to get. So they know where their investment money is going to and what they're going to get out of it. So, you should treat the marketing agency that you're trying to hire the same way. You should look for testimonial. I always ask, hey, can you give me the contact information of a few of your clients? I want to ask them some questions specific to me that are going to be relatable to the kind of service that I'm looking for. And do
Yeah.
your research, guys. Definitely do your research and make sure that you understand that that company is the right company for you. So that's a great.
Yeah. And I'd even take a step further. I think you should spend more time figuring out who isn't your type of marketing agency, excuse me. That, I think a lot of issues that you notice in the world of business is that you just weren't dangerous enough or didn't have the knowledge enough to know where you were making mistakes at. So I think when it comes to marketing agencies, the same thing goes, is you almost define more importantly who is not the type of people you want to work with. Sometimes you can find amazing college students that just need help learning this, and they're willing to come on, be a graphic designer.
Yeah.
Obviously with the photography world, obviously they know Photoshop and Illustrator and all that stuff, but you might need a second opinion. And designing a flyer that attracts a certain type of let's say client, whether it's a bride or let's call it, I don't know, we'll call it whatever in that world is from an avatar standpoint. A marketer might just know a little bit more content aspects from when it comes to marketing, how to word things a certain way, the copywriting aspect, how to lay it out correctly. You might be the expert in the photography side, but one of the biggest mistakes I've seen is two things. Either they, like let's say the analogy of a kitchen, You walk into the kitchen and you're like, all right, I'm going to make the best meal in the entire world, 4 course, all this stuff, but you don't know how to cook. And so, you're thinking you're doing it all yourself and it's coming out like crap. And your marketing could be the same way. On the reverse side, you might go in the kitchen and know how to make one thing really good, and then you're going to outsource the rest. But you're dangerous enough to know how the kitchen works. And so I think that's a key concept that a lot of business owners, and especially in the photography world, I'd say you really have to nail down. It's like, what am I really good at? And if I'm not good at one thing in the marketing world, I would learn one thing. Let's say it's Facebook ads, SEO, how to run Google ads, how to optimize a website. That way, you're not going to get screwed when, let's say you're doing 4 other things and you're outsourcing it to an agency. You know enough that you can catch errors and problems that are going to arise, and you're not going to waste money to find out 3 to 4 months later that, there is an issue.
That's definitely something that I always tell people when I'm coaching. Make sure you understand just enough to know that if the person that you hired is doing the right thing, is doing their job, is delivering what you're looking for. You don't have to do the work. You don't have to be the expert. That's why we delegate. That's scaling and making sure that you focus your time on what you need to focus on. But you need to understand enough to know, are they really doing what they're supposed to be doing? Is this deliverable what it needs to be? Are we going in the right direction? So I always tell people, learn as much as you need to know who to hire, at least, right?
Yeah, I think as any business owner, marketer, photographer, whoever, you need to know Google Analytics. GA4 is what it's called. You need to know who's coming to your site. You need to know who's returning. You need to know clicks, the calls, how long they're spending on your website, what page is really popular or what page isn't. And I think if you could learn the analytics side of the business from a Google Analytics standpoint, because Google is going to track everything that happens on your website.
Yes.
You will be able to flag and have issues and find issues faster than the marketing agency probably will, because it's your business. You should care way more about your business than your actual marketing agency technically. So you might as well start, diving into analytics as well.
Yeah, that's a huge thing that I feel like people miss when they're starting, or even later down the road. Like people start and they do their own website, right? There's lots of templates out there. People, especially as photographers, we're like, we have the pictures, we have the materials. Let's put a website together. We've all been guilty of building our own website, but
Yep.
then we're missing on one, the copy is a big one that we are normally not great at. Making sure you have the right copy there for SEO, for maximizing that visibility, but also not looking at your analytics, not collecting the data, and not using the data to make decisions. So decision driven, data driven decisions, very, very important thing in any business. And I feel like that's in the creative arena. It's something that it just goes over people's heads very often, unfortunately. What should some of the service-based professionals be focusing their budget on when it comes to marketing efforts?
Yeah, I mean, there's two. It depends on your budget. The one thing I think it's really important is you need to know your competitors, and I think it's obviously in the world of let's say photography. You can always name 5 to 6 other people probably that are doing the same thing you're doing. Some big, some small. But the truth is, you need to know what they're doing marketing wise if you really want to stand out. So the first thing you kind of want to do is audit yourself. You need to see, am I ranking on Google? Am I showing up when people search online for certain terms, whether it's wedding photography, maybe it's portfolio stuff, maybe it's model runway stuff. Again, not a photographer, so let's say fill in the blank for your service, but then just see if you rank for it. So if you're not ranking on Google, then maybe you need to take a step back and figure out, okay, how do I rank on Google? So right now with the world of AI, there's a lot of content opportunity out there. So writing content that actually speaks and shows that you're the authority. So Google's an algorithm when it boils down to it. And I think as one of the biggest mistakes you can make as a marketer, or let's say even a business owner, is realizing that Google doesn't know what a pie tastes like. It knows that a certain layout, a certain format, a certain recipe layout and instructions technically would make a good pie because it's like a pie, but it's because it's had so much data to see what other people have been writing. So all you have to do really is just realize that, okay, instead of writing for an audience sometimes or writing for who's going to really be reading my articles, you just need to be putting out enough to show Google that you're the authority in the subject or topic. And the best way to look at this is like a library. If I look at, your website as a library, and I look at your competitors, and then I look at another competitor, and I walk into a library and I see, oh my gosh, look at all these aisles, which could be pages. Look at all these like books, which are blogs, maybe photographs, more or less say authority pieces that show that you're really an expert in what you do. But then if I walk into a library or look into a website that barely has any pages, barely has any books or blogs, barely has any other authority factors, Google's not going to rank you. So understanding who your competitors are is a big thing. Making sure that, I wouldn't say copying them, but don't get left behind, more or less. And you can utilize AI and all these other tools, to stay on top of it. So I think really the key is like finding out who your competitors are, seeing how, let's call it, your library, your website matches up to theirs. And then on top of that, dive into how to use AI to write blogs, how to basically optimize your website. I mean, I can always say, yeah, sure, go spend money on ads. But unless you are ready to, let's say, capture or let's say captivate your audience, more or less, you can spend ad money all day long and they won't convert. So sometimes it's not best to just throw money in ads. It's, make sure that your home base is great. Your website looks nice. It's going to convert. And another thing that I think a lot of, I'll even say photographers leave out when it comes to their marketing, give somebody a reason to give you their name and their email. What a lot of people don't realize is that why not create, for your localized market, a PDF of the top locations to shoot for, for a wedding or, for engagement photos, and then have them give you their name and email in exchange for this, let's call it this list or this PDF or whatever you want to call it. And now you put them on an email marketing chain that's totally free. And that's just free marketing because you're basically offering somebody something in exchange for some information and build up that list.
Exactly. So those are called lead magnets, right? So having that lead magnet that attracts the right client and offers something in exchange for their information is crucial. So building that list where you can, hey, I'm doing some sessions, a discounted rate for whoever is on my email list. So be talking about that, be collecting those emails because you never know. It happens last year where Instagram was down for a day and people were freaking out and panicking. If you have your own email list, you have all the contacts of your clients and potential clients. You are not reliant on social media. You can contact those people. You can be talking to them. You can reaching out with promotions and whatever you have going on. So 100% is something that everybody should have on their website or even in their social media, something that helps you collect information from clients and potential clients for sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, don't be afraid to be human. I think that's the other key thing too. 'Cause if you're going to build an email list, let people know what's going on in your lives. Let them know like new things you're up to. If you go on vacation, I think that's the other key though in business is just make yourself look like you're also like your customer is or was. And the human aspect can go so far when it comes to business.
Exactly. I always learn that people buy from people that they know and they trust. And the only way for them to get to know you is if you start sharing some things with them. I'm not saying you have to go out there and tell them everything about your life. You can still be private and keep some things private, but share with them some of the day-to-day things you go through, the behind the scenes of your work, and so they can understand how things work from a service provider standpoint to a customer standpoint. Share your vacation, like you said, some of the things that just help them relate to you, because people are a lot more comfortable dropping some cash in your hand if they know who you are, even if they've never met you in person. They have the feeling that they know who you are as a person when you're sharing those little bits and pieces of your day to day with them.
Absolutely.
Perfect. What are some of the other tips when it comes to just general marketing and making sure, let's maybe hone down a little bit on the website and in the presence there? Some of the things that you feel like everybody should have on their website.
Yeah, I mean, I think the major thing is a giveaway, a lead magnet, but make your lead magnet per page. So if you offer multiple different types of services, don't just offer the same lead magnet on your homepage that's on your page specific to weddings, maybe the engagement or I don't know any type of product specific type
Hmm.
page. One of the biggest mistakes I see all the time is the people that come to us that are looking for SEO, for search engine optimization, to help them rank on Google, aren't going to download the PDF that we made that talks about ads because again they're in just a different buyer mindset. The other thing too is there's so many tools, like there's one called Detailed, there's one called SEO Quake that you can install on your Chrome, and it's free, but it'll tell you how deep a page is. So you can go to a competitor and it'll say they have 1,500 words on this page, they have 16 sections, they have 17 photographs, and really there's this kind of SEO guru guy named Kyle, I think it's Roos or Rusk, And he has this, kind of quote he's known as, always beat it by two. So, find out what your competitors are doing on their pages and then just beat them by two. So if it's two more photographs, two more titles on your page, because at the end of the day, Google wants to give an answer. It wants to give the best answer. And a lot of times it boils down to who's giving more information. And so that's a good way to start from a website standpoint. But, I would really say, no matter what, build out your website to speak to your audience. And at the same time, don't forget about blogging. I mean, and I know this sounds kind of hard, but I mean, sometimes it's worth hiring a virtual assistant or hiring a college writer, knowing they're going to get credit or working out something with a local university to get blogging where you can put out a blog a day. And I know it sounds like a lot to some people because they're like, oh my gosh, what 30 blogs a month? It's like, nobody reads a blog. Like, when's the last time you really read a blog? And so that being said, but at the same time, that's what Google's looking at. Google wants to see that you got the books in the library to bump up this library and say that you're the authority in this subject in your market. The other key thing too, I would say is don't be afraid to kind of be vulnerable on your site. I think a lot of times, we get so wrapped up in this has got to be the coolest looking site, and that's true to a point. But if you get so wrapped up in making the site so cool, so big, and your load times are bad, your speed is slow, Google will not rank you no matter how cool your website is. So always remember, like, stick to your basics. Think about user ability and user experience. If I walk into a store and it smells bad, I'm walking out. But if I like walk in, great experience, it seems like, let's call it, use a store, for example. Everybody says hi. I can easily see the products I want to buy or I'm interested in. It's divided up nicely. There's not a lot of like people standing in line. Same thing goes for your website. Like, make sure your products are laid out nicely. Make sure it's easy to navigate. If I click on a button, it doesn't take me anywhere. Huge red flag. And these are very simple things. And don't be afraid to just have, kind of an authority factor about yourself on there or your business. And I think that's another key thing a lot of people forget is, your website is not only just a piece of you and your personality, but it's a piece of every single business you've worked with or every customer. So, you can pretty much define your type of audience very easily just by kind of breaking out what does each person look like that I've worked with and what would they want to see. And sometimes, if you've had a great client that you've worked with or experienced, wouldn't say do this with everybody, reach out to them and be like, all right, hey, I would love for you to, give me some feedback on my website. What do you like about it and what do you not like? Is there any errors that you see? Being vulnerable like that also shows you or shows them that you, one, value them as a customer, but you also value their opinion. And that, they're probably also going to refer you a lot more business just because now they feel that you value them. And you may feel like, I don't want to ask a customer because it's making me look like I'm not this hard, this big or whatever type business. I'm vulnerable. But the truth is vulnerability wins. So those are just three easy tips, I think, or three easy things I say either keep on top of mind or try to, apply to your business.
Again, getting out of your head, makes things so much easier. We're not worried about how we look to certain people. They already hired you. They trusted you. It's an easy person to be a little bit more vulnerable with and get that good feedback. So,
absolutely. I mean, I think I say this on stage all the time. It's like dating. When your customers are literally dating you, you're dating business, you're dating Google if you want to look at it like this. So you want to make sure that you're doing the best you can to give the best experience. So a lot of times from a customer standpoint, if they go to your website and let's just say it's loud, it's messy, it's not easy to navigate, it's like going on a first bad date. They might call you and they might talk to you and they're like, okay, we're going to give this person a chance. But that website, should have closed the deal the first date. But again, you want that marriage, we'll call it. You want to have that client finally give you the check and give you some referrals. So when it comes down to it, really think of, how you're, let's call it dating your customer, your website, Google, your marketing agency, things like that.
So we know that answering questions that our clients have as a content on our website can be very helpful for ranking, for SEO, to help you connect with the right client. So where should people be going to go grab that information? How do they figure it out? What are the questions that their clients are asking so they can go and put the answers as in a copy format on their website?
I think there's 2 points to that question. One is, what is answer that Google wants to see? So think of your cold customer. What is it the people that don't even know you, what kind of questions are they going to ask you? So if you just go to Google and I type in wedding photographer Tampa, what are the questions Google is going to give me that, technically are being asked around that specific search term? Same thing, so I pulled some of those questions. But also I think the other key though too is ask your customers. I mean, when someone sits in front of you and you're talking to them, I wouldn't be afraid to ask them, what are some of the questions that you have that are specific to this type of shoot or this type of booking? And don't be afraid to take, what they're saying, especially if you see it repeated a few times. I know my mom actually used to be a wedding photographer back in the day in Kansas City.
Ah,
Yeah. I, I always joke. I'm like, I've been to so many weddings, about 100 plus, second shooting or like being her assistant when I was younger that like,
oh, that's awesome.
yeah, I was like, if I get married, it has to be like at Shamu Stadium or something because I'm so tired of seeing the church thing over and over again. I'm like,
Right.
I'm like, oh yeah. And it's one of those things. I don't mean this disrespectful to people getting married. I have not been married, so maybe it'll be different for me, in that moment. But I'm like, oh my gosh, this was like the same thing I saw yesterday on Friday, the same thing last weekend. You know, um,
It's their first time, but it's our 50th time
oh yeah, I'm
that
like,
year. So yeah.
yeah. So I definitely understand a little bit when it comes down to, the photography side. Because I saw my mom's business, and I saw she had the home office. She turned one of our side rooms into a little studio for people to come in. She had couches, had all the pictures on the wall and things like that of what she shot. But what I also know, the same questions get repeated over and over again.
Yep.
So asking your customers, hey, what are some concerns? And I wouldn't word it from a standpoint of like, hey, I want to put stuff on my website. What questions should I ask? I would just genuinely ask, like, hey, what were some of the problems you ran into with booking a photographer or booking me or finding me? What is it that you looked for? What kind of questions did you have right up front? Were you curious about a deposit? Things that like sometimes, you may not want to ask, especially I know from the money standpoint, you always want to make sure that you're like, hey, I'm open for business. But I can tell you it's almost equally, if not more important, to deter people that are not your type of client. So if you do require a deposit, putting that on your website, if you do require, your type of wedding is a certain type of, let's say, budget, do not be afraid to put information around that on your website. I think one of the biggest mistakes I could say from a photography standpoint, because now I'm like thinking about my mom here for a second,
Yeah.
was, you know, if you shoot high scale weddings or you shoot high scale or say high cost, and I'm thinking from a marketing term of the wording I'm using, but if let's say your product is expensive, do not fear away from showing the best on your homepage. Because again, what's going to happen is if you look like you do everything, you're going to find a lot of people that don't want to pay anything. And so you have to be very careful with what and how you push it. So I've got a buddy actually I was talking to yesterday. He's a videographer here in Tampa, great guy. We're designing his website and helping him out with some stuff. And he takes on a lot of very small jobs. And I'm like, we can't post these on your website. Like, I want you to tell people no. That's my goal. Like that's everybody's, has a business. That should be your goal, is that I'm doing so well, I'm turning down people because, no one's complaining in that situation,
Yeah.
except the person that's, hearing this information.
It's the same concept of dressing for the job you want and not the job you have, right? So, you need to be showing the kinds of clients that you want to be booking. You need to be showing the kinds of venues that you want to be booking from a photography standpoint and so on. So making sure that that's what you are sharing, um, it's going to just attract more of the same kind of client.
And make sure you put the question specific to the pages. So for example, if I own a t-shirt shop and I own a clothing brand, we'll call it, and if I'm not answering questions that are specific to that clothing brand and or like the type of shirts, shorts, shoes, whatever I'm, or even going into climate situations, be specific to what you're doing. So if it's wedding, if it's portrait, if it's engagement, make 5 to 6 questions at the bottom of your page about those things. So don't just duplicate just because you answer on the homepage. Each one of your pages has the ability to outrank your homepage. So you're making a page about wedding photography. Phenomenal. Make sure you know the top 5 wedding photographers that are in your area. Find out how many words they have on their page. Find out how many pictures they have. Use those tools I said, Detailed or SEO Quick. Replicate that, and then put facts at the bottom that answer the questions that are specific to that niche, or let's say that product offering.
Those are great tips. Yeah, definitely something that people can apply right away after they listen to it today. I love those tangible things that people can use right away. Another thing I was going to ask you, it's about just ads a little bit more. So that's something that your agency provides. What are some of the new things you're seeing in 2024 or even last year when it comes to ads, and anything that has changed lately that people need to be more focusing on or watching for?
Yeah, there's two major ones. I mean, ads are always going to be ads. I mean, end of the day, from us, it's like a billboard online that, or it's like a billboard. You drive down the street, that billboard's there. That's kind of how ads work. And, it weirdly, it's like dating. If the creepier it is, it works. Not works, but like it's definitely noticeable, we'll call it. So I don't want to say get creepy with your ads, but be very, very tailored in your ads. So if you're targeting somebody for engagement photos, have three different ads going at any given time. Mention, the location that, the area is in. And I mean, get specific. I'm in St. Pete. I would even mention maybe a higher neighborhood in St. Pete, or, again, and there's obviously a certain volume of people getting married in this area, but I would target locations. I would target, venues. And then, on top of that, I would even get so specific. And, obviously I like to run always a deal or some type of urgency offer at any given time. But, when it comes to ads, like look into animated ads, and that's a really great opportunity where you can showcase some of the photos that you've taken and have them rotating in the ad. They're called HTML5 ads. They're sometimes hard to get up and running, but once they're running, they get a lot of clicks. On top of that, the other thing too is, understand that Google is trying to step away from, cookies and tracking. So,
Yeah.
Setting up your website to capture leads is crucial. If you build your own lead list, it will cut out your advertising expense. Granted, I know sometimes it's one of those things where, I have a list of 1,000 people that have used my services, but how many of them are getting remarried, engaged, or whatever? The truth is, the point is you can ask them for referrals. You can
They
just make
know
sure that you
people.
yes, exactly. I think Zig Ziglar, not to change the subject from weddings or like, the let's call the happy parts of life, but Zig Ziglar, one of the greatest, I think, sales coaches in the world, used to say that, every single person knows enough to fill a funeral home. So there is definitely opportunity there for referrals. And so I think that's one of your major things. But also remember too that Facebook, Google, now TikTok or Twitter, I mean, obviously Twitter maybe wouldn't apply here, but they don't talk to each other. They're the demigods of the internet. So they hate each other. So Zuckerberg isn't talking to Google and letting the data share. So make sure when you're running ads that you understand the platform that you're on. Facebook ad is going to convert way different than what a Google ad is going to look like. And I probably wouldn't even run Google ads other than maybe AdWords when it came down to running Google ads, just because I think display is not getting the clicks like they used to. And then,
Mhm.
I mean, shoot, put ads on TikTok right now. TikTok is killing it,
I was
and you
gonna
could,
ask about that.
yeah, it's huge right now. I think that's one of the areas you probably, if anybody's listening to this, I would literally just put up I don't say crappy ad, but like literally have somebody design you, just have it called the top wedding photographer in X city, and just run that ad, put $10, $20 a day on it. Just let it run for a week. I mean, everybody can afford in business $100, or there's something you can trim out of your life $100. Just see what that does. And then make sure you have, like, I would make sure on your website or a landing page, you have a spot that's like, download this information to get like the top 10, I think, locations for, your next engage or for your engagement photos.
Yes.
Because again, if you're going to take traffic off someplace, remember they don't like that. So it's not advantageous for, TikTok to have people leave their system, but drive them somewhere where you're going to get their information. Don't just drive them to your website, because then they're just going to bounce back and go to TikTok. Same thing on Facebook, same thing on Google. Think about if I leave this platform right now and I go to your site, or I go to whatever link you send me, what do I get out of it? Or like, why should I stay on this site and submit my information?
That's great. That's great. So I know you told me, just to get more into personal now, you told me about a fun fact. You called it a fun fact of you
Yeah.
and your life. I'll call it an interesting fact. I think it's fascinating. And if it looks like that's something that you share often when you're lecturing, when you're talking. So I'd love to hear about it. There's a story about your dad. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I think when it comes down to like why I push so much on my own stuff, or why I love the psychology, or like call it neurolinguistics of the human brain and just us, it comes off from my dad. So my dad actually served 10 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, and then later was exonerated about 20 years later after he got out. And, or no, sorry, about 10 years later after he got out.
Yeah.
So he's actually one of the top people in the United States that actually speaks on wrongful convictions, speaks all the time about certain laws that support us versus supporting the system, we'll call it. And I get to see him on stage talk with some really cool people and, do a lot of cool things, especially for, different states, certain laws that, need a second opinion on, or they're trying to pass that actually either, don't help us. And he'll speak on that and, why they don't need to pass this, or he's very heavy in the aspects of laws that support us as citizens to make sure that, that wrongful convictions don't keep happening.
Yeah. How old were you when that happened?
So I actually wasn't born yet. So,
Okay.
yeah, I was born right after he got out, basically. Let's say he didn't wait long. We'll call that. Yeah.
He
It's
was
so
ready
weird
to
when you
have
talk
a
about it
baby.
like it's your parents, but yeah. Yeah. So let's just say, yep, he was happy to be out. Yep. But, it's one of those things where I get to meet a lot of cool people, and especially get to see there's so many people that have like such strong gratitude. I mean, I've met guys who spent 20 years prison, some that have been on or had been on death row, and the death penalty was proposed to them, and they've gotten out. And I've got to hear their stories and meet these guys, and it's just one thing when you meet somebody who's they're just so happy to be able to, like, let's say, go to the bathroom without somebody watching them, or be able to control when they can go outside, let alone see a sunset, you know, and their gratitude and their appreciation for life. Like, these guys don't even harbor hate. And then we get mad about the littlest things that affect us.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it's a great lesson for sure, and something that, I feel good that you were not there yet and you got to just learn the lessons and didn't have to live through it. But, nice that you got exposed to all of that and then be able to help him and I'm sure learn from him and be a speaker yourself too, and a coach. I'm sure a lot came from watching him do everything.
absolutely. It's definitely funny when you see it from a parent standpoint. Like, I see my dad on stage, and yeah, it's interesting. I'll say that. I'm sure he thinks sometimes the same thing about me, but it's definitely interesting when you're seeing it from the inside, you know. And I know how many times he's practiced this speech, or where he thinks he's going to mess up, and I can see a pause, just little things, that you catch, and you would never know it from an audience standpoint. But
Of course.
yeah, it's just also too great to see that he's applying, his, I'll call it hell, that he's went through for 10 years serving for a crime he didn't commit, that he's putting it toward good and just trying to bring light to a lot of dark issues, we'll call it.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that personal story with us,
No,
and also
absolutely.
all the amazing tips that you share with our audience today. Tell everybody where they can find you online and social media, and everywhere that you get in contact with people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, you can check us out on gomediashark.com. That's the website. So we're doing a lot of changes on there too. And but also, if you're a photographer listening to this and you're just like, hey, I got a question, feel free to hit me up at joey@gomediashark.com. I'll tell you straight up if I think this is a good idea, bad idea, what I would do. I do know some agencies or marketers that I trust if you're looking for something like that. But if it's more of a, just personal connection, hit me up. I'm on Instagram. It's that marketing guy. And so, yeah, feel free to message me on there too. And I think actually we just became friends, I think, yesterday.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, woo.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the Accidental CEO podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Lots of good tips today. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us in the world where creativity and business strategy collide. I am Nata Salvatori, thrilled to have shared this time with you. Remember, every episode is a step closer to mastering the art of being an accidental CEO. So don't miss out. Hit subscribe, drop us a sweet review, and spread the word to your creative tribe. Your next big breakthrough could be just one episode away. Join us next time for more insights, laughs, and actionable tips. Keep pushing boundaries, dreaming big, and embracing the beautiful chaos of entrepreneurship. Here's to make magic happen in your business and beyond.